Hi, I'm Becky Davis with City TV. Welcome to Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine show. We bring you up to date on the city's most significant issues, projects, and events. As history has shown us time and again, our vegetation, climate, and topography combine to make our area particularly prone to wildfires. Because of that, in 2004, residents of our high fire risk areas voted themselves into an assessment district that funds a number of programs to address the challenge. Up next, City TV's Chris Bell goes over these programs and how they can save your home and maybe your life.
Wildfires. We don't know when or where they will strike. We only know that it's just a matter of time before they do. A look back on the history of wildfires in our area reveals a quiltwork of conflagration, with every decade in recent history having at least one major event.
So in the Santa Barbara front country area, we have a significant history of wildfires, and our conditions have changed over time. You know, in the 1910s, we were not as highly populated as we are today, and today we are have a significant amount of homes within what's our urban wildland interface areas that have burned, have a fire history of burning, and will continue to burn over time. It averages out to about one major fire every 10 to 15 years.
In response to the inevitability of wildfire, in 2004, the residents of the most vulnerable areas of the city acted to do something about it.
So the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District was established in 2004 as a result of a vote from homeowners who decided that Santa Barbara City needed a little bit of extra protection in their high fire hazard areas.
That extra protection comes in the form of 3 programs funded by the assessment district. They are Defensible Space Outreach and Education, Road Clearance, and Chipping. Defensible Space is a strategy that aims to reduce fire fuel and vulnerability.
Defensible space is the area around the home that's been purposely managed and maintained in order to reduce the impact that wildfire has on a property.
A defensible home takes into consideration your entire property. And there's 4 components. The first component would be the vegetation that's surrounding your property. The second component would be to look at your access. The third would be looking at your building construction. You know, is it fire resistant construction? And then the last component would be looking at, if there was a fire at a distance, how would your home respond to embers?
Defensible space is a landscape that is broken down into 4 zones, with the area closest to the structure being the least densely vegetated and flammable, and the furthest being more natural.
So 0 to 30 feet is a fairly open, characteristic planting with low-growing plants with a lot of hardscaping. The second zone tends to be more succulents, still kind of an open concept, irrigated plants. The third zone tends to be more Mediterranean types of plants, you know, not quite as open as the first 2 zones. And then the last zone is zone 4, which tends to be more of the native plants.
For evidence of the effectiveness of employing a defensible space strategy, all you have to do is look to the hills. Many of the homes that survived the T and Hesesita fires 8 years ago wouldn't be there if it weren't for defensible space.
So when we bought the place 2 years after the T fire, I guess, this house had burned down and not rebuilt. The one behind it, this one still hasn't rebuilt. This one had not yet rebuilt. So really the only one you could see standing right here is this single surviving house and ours. It was pretty well set up in terms of defensible space. You see the oaks around the property, but not too much other big vegetation near the home. No branches of the oaks that hang too close to the roof line. There's nice wire meshing over any of the vents to the house. The home itself is made of adobe, so that's helpful. There's only a limited amount of exposed wood on the outside, and then the clay tile roof is helpful for fire reduction.
So the house behind us burned and the house in front of us burned, but there were firefighters on the street, and they couldn't catch every house, but fortunately we had done our defensible space clearing, and so they were able to stay.
And that's the true power of defensible space. It reduces the chances of wildfire getting to your home while increasing the chances firefighters can defend it.
Sizing up a fire for firefighters, they're looking at protecting a structure, but first off, they're looking at protecting their lives.
Firefighters have a split-second decision when they're when they're working during a wildfire to assess and determine which homes would actually be defensible. And a large way that they do that is making sure that homeowners have done their defensible space and what's visible from the outside of the home when they approach a home during a wildfire.
Defensible space has other benefits too. Native plants use less water and require less maintenance, and with proper vegetation thinning, you may gain access to more of your property.
We got together with our neighbors that summer before the T and did a lot of clearing. I mean, so much clearing on this side, we didn't even know the contour of the space between our two homes. That's how thick it was. And so it was amazing, and it was much more beautiful after we cleared it.
While the principles of defensible space are simple, knowing where to start can be daunting. And that brings us back to the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District.
So inside the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District, any homeowners can contact us and we'll be happy to come out to their property and assess their defensible space on their home and work with them one-on-one to make sure that they're creating an effective defensible space around their structure and on their property.
And to me, it gives us information, but it also lets them know the property. And so if they want to come up here and stage, I'm totally, that's totally wonderful.
Probably every couple of years we'll have a fire person come by and say, what do we still need to do? And this year it was the bottom of the garage doors, rubber gasket thing that goes along the bottom. He says those are worn out, and that's right where the wind, will suck it in. And that had never occurred to me, so we replaced those. Of course, that wasn't expensive or time-consuming, but it was like that, that locked up that area.
A few little tips we had here and there. For example, there's this plant, these sumacs, that's a volunteer and really invasive, grows so quickly. And so the fire department pointed out where the sumacs were growing near the base of the oak trees, that creates a fire ladder, and that even though they're far away from the house in the canyon, that's one thing we could do to really minimize the risk of fire, is to cut all of the sumacs annually.
Establishing and maintaining good defensible space drastically reduces the chances a wildfire will destroy a home, but it also increases the amount of clippings generated. The second of the 3 programs of the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District addresses that problem.
And homeowners can take vegetation that they've cut, clearing their defensible space around their home, place it on the side of the road, and then our crews come by and we'll chip and dispose of that vegetation for no additional cost.
We've also unfortunately seen the effects of both fire and the drought, and we've lost 4 oak trees since we moved in just 6 years ago. We like to keep some of the wood for burning fires in our fireplace, but then we also are left with a lot of extra wood that is hard to get rid of in just your little green waste bins. So it's great having a pile that we can just set out and have the fire department come and chip it and not have to worry about disposing that wood.
The chipping program can save homeowners a lot of money and hassle, as well as provide a valuable resource in the form of mulch.
If homeowners are interested in obtaining any chips that we've produced through our chipping program, they can contact us at the fire department and we'd be happy to set them up and put them on a list to receive any of the chip vegetation that we've produced through our chipping program.
But mulch in the high fire hazard areas has to be properly placed.
It's a compromise between drought, what do you do for the drought, and what do? You can't just, for drought you don't want to have everything bare dirt.
And we recommend not spreading any chips directly up against the home. When spreading chips around the property, we recommend a 30-foot distance from the structure itself so embers don't ignite those chips and those end up blowing into the home, creating an additional hazard.
Cut vegetation is picked up once a year and needs to be placed properly at the street. For detailed chipping instructions and chipping dates, residents of the district can go to santabarbaraca.gov/WFSAD. The third program of the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District is road clearance.
We're 10 feet wide and almost 10 feet tall, so as you can imagine, we need every bit of access as we can.
To give fire personnel and residents every bit of access possible, the Assessment District initiated a road clearance program.
And each year we clear approximately 14 miles of roadways inside the Assessment District. And during that road clearance, we really like to focus on our major evacuation routes. And the primary reason for our road clearance program is to help the ingress of first responders that are coming in during a wildfire event and the egress of homeowners that may be evacuating during a wildfire.
The road clearance program works with homeowners to maintain aesthetics and privacy while providing the room firefighters need.
We want to maintain a 10-foot horizontal clearance of overgrown vegetation from the side of the roadways, and also a 13.5-foot clearance from the edge of those roadways vertically. And they are not forced to have our crews maintain any of their hedges or their road clearance work. That being said, it is important that homeowners understand that they're required to maintain that road clearance at a year-round basis, and to make sure they understand just how important it is that they maintain that on a regular basis and that vegetation isn't getting too overgrown on the roadways in front of their homes.
Combined, the Defensible Space, chipping, and road clearance programs of the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District make our most wildfire vulnerable areas safer for residents and first responders alike. Through education, fuels management, and better access, City Fire Department staff hope to reduce the severity and damage of this dangerous and inevitable fact of life on the South Coast.
We know that we're going to have to live with wildland fire. So the Wildland Fire Assessment District gives people the tools to reduce that impact of wildland fire, to make our community safer as a whole.
If you live in one of the high fire hazard areas of the city and would like a free defensible space evaluation, call Chris Braden at 564-5737. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more Inside Santa Barbara.
Thanks, guys. Darn.
Well, that was very thoughtful of you.
Well, you know me, Dad. Plants don't need as much water in the fall and winter, so I decided to get up early and turn it down.
So is that what you're wearing to Grandma's?
Take control of your controller. Turn it down.
I grew up here. I've made memories here, and I love being able to drive around knowing that this is my community. I'm helping my community.
We care, and we want to make this community a better place.
This career is for someone who wants to be challenged deep down inside to better a community.
It's the best job in the world. It really is. It's like a dream come true. Join your home team.
Welcome back. While areas of Northern California are seeing above average rainfall, our area continues to be stuck in a historic drought. Up next, we take a look at where our water supply stands now and where we go from here. These aerial images of Cachuma Reservoir at 7% of capacity illustrate the worsening drought situation on the South Coast. Now entering its 6th year, this drought of record continues to push our dwindling water supply into uncharted territory, forcing the city to explore, develop, and expand water sources to meet the basic health and safety needs of the community.
Things are getting worse. Things are getting much worse out there, and we are preparing for continued shortages, and by doing so, we're going to be ramping up our requests for additional conservation.
The city is asking the community to increase water conservation from its current level of 35% to 40% in order to save an additional 800 acre-feet to meet the projected peak demand in the summer of 2017.
We believe it's something that this community can achieve. They've been very successful so far at meeting the request for conservation, and I think we're just trying to raise the awareness that we need to ask for more. It's unfortunate we have to ask for more, but that's just where we are right now.
We need people to reduce their demands to stay within the capacity of our system because we don't have any storage buffer to help with that anymore. Our storage at Cachuma and Gibraltar will essentially be gone.
This storage buffer has been drained over the course of this unprecedented drought. One key factor in considering new conservation goals is the amount of water we can save. Although many options have been studied, including restrictions on development and bans on overhead watering, the city has identified a discretionary water use, lawn watering, as the single best step we can take to lower the demand during the summer irrigation season, while still protecting established trees and shrubs.
Up to 12% of our water is currently still being put on turf. And so that's why we're focusing our attention on that. During a normal time, watering of turf is probably taking up 20% of our water as a community. And so it may be fine when there's plentiful water, but I think given the situation that we're in, it's time to let it go. What we're trying to really do is help the community prioritize its landscape. What we don't want to see the community let go of is the trees and shrubs, which are a much more significant investment by the community, and really it kind of gives Santa Barbara its look.
Trees, shrubs, and water are all precious community resources. Trees and shrubs make our houses feel like home. They also improve property values, clean our water and air, and even make our streets safer and quieter. When we water wisely and maintain our trees carefully, we enjoy a wide range of benefits at a low cost and with little effort.
During times of drought, we encourage our community members to assess how their trees are doing and apply water in an appropriate fashion. So it's important to apply mulch around the tree that keeps the evaporation down and keeps the soil nice and friable so that the water can go through the soil. You also want to pay attention to the age of the tree, and also you want to water where it counts. So it's really important to take a look at the drip line of the tree and water in those areas, because that's truly where the feeder roots are, and those are the roots that really need the water.
The long-term council policy to diversify our water supply has been critical to supplying Santa Barbara with enough water to fully meet health and safety demands during this drought.
During droughts, our normal water supply, such as Cachuma and Gibraltar, become diminished. And so having the diversity of water sources has allowed us to manage and really adaptively manage this drought. And we've been able to increase our groundwater pumping. We've imported water through the State Water Project. We're reactivating the desalination facility. We have recycled water, and we also have increased conservation. So that is a very well-rounded, diverse water supply mix that has helped us to get through the current drought. Most agencies in California are reliant on imported water from the State Water Project and groundwater. So the fact that we have desalination and recycled water to supplement our supplies and also have some of the greatest conservation rates in the state has really helped us.
As mentioned, one of our supplies is desalination. When the plant is completed in early 2017, it will produce 3 million gallons of water per day, equivalent to 3,125 acre-feet per year, or about 1/3 of city water demand. The desal plant also has the capability to expand water production up to 10,000 acre-feet per year and can help meet our regional water needs.
We're really fortunate to have had that facility and all the planning that went into having it available before this drought started. And so having it come online now is really going to help in meeting our demands next year. If we didn't have desalination, we'd be in a much worse place.
For more information about the desalination plant, how to water your trees and shrubs effectively, or drought information, visit santabarbaraca.gov/water. Emergencies can happen in an instant, and many times without warning. That's why it's critical to have an emergency plan in place and to practice it often. Up next, we'll take a look at what the Santa Barbara Airport does to make sure they're well prepared in the event of a real-life disaster.
This is Santa Barbara Tower announcing the triennial drill. Repeat, this is a drill. California Airlines Flight 920 experienced a runway excursion while landing on runway 25. The aircraft is located on runway 15 right at taxiway Charlie. Smoke is coming from the aircraft and the passengers were ejected from the aircraft. This is only a drill.
This is the call first responders received during the recent airport disaster drill held in September.
Emergency crews are on their way.
The Federal Aviation Administration requires that every airport that's certified to serve scheduled airlines, commercial carriers, conduct an emergency exercise every 3 years. The main goal of that emergency exercise is to involve all the first responders that are outlined in the plan. It gives them a chance to kind of convene on the field, exercise their communications plan, because communicating on the field when you've got different agencies on different frequencies can be tricky. You know, the communications is a key in every drill, as well as giving them all an opportunity to kind of run through the steps of what they would be doing.
During these triennial drills, various agencies such as Airport Patrol, Fire, Police, Airport Operations, and medical personnel are all able to practice strategic and tactical response capabilities in a risk-reduced environment. In this scenario, an MTD bus was used to act as the damaged aircraft.
It's important to have multiple agencies there because a disaster just doesn't hit one type of an entity. So even if we have a fire, it's not just fire, it's law enforcement, it's public works. There's a lot of other agencies that are involved, including environmental health. And so this type of exercise brings everybody together, including public health, the sheriffs, the FBI, NTSB, the airlines, American Red Cross, and we all come together and we discuss, okay, what worked, what didn't work. And if you don't get those buy-ins and know how we're going to work together when the real incident happens, that's the wrong time to start shaking hands and finding out who's going to be at the table.
Alert 3 drill. This is an Alert 3 drill.
As soon as the call went out on the radio, first responders quickly arrived on scene and began performing their specified tasks.
Initially, air traffic control announces the drill on a crash phone, which comes to several different parties. It comes to the SOC, our Security Operations Center, City Police, the fire station, and they all respond in different methods. Fire is responding to put out the fire, to respond to the victims, and patrol also is basically sizing up the scene, making sure it's secure, and they also started responding to victims.
What's your name?
First responders weren't the only ones involved in the drill. Nearly 100 volunteers also participated, acting as both victims of the aircraft accident and distraught friends and family.
Each airport is required by the federal government to just open up a reception area for these distraught families of victims or potential victims. So we work with the Red Cross and the airline, and we also exercise that. It's going on while the drill's going on. We have actors that have volunteered to be distraught relatives. We give them a list of typical symptoms that these people would show, and they pick a couple and work on them and go into our reception area in the terminal that we open up once we get word that the accident has occurred. And they work with Red Cross and airline staff to just practice that a little bit because, you know, that's a difficult scenario. There's no answers for those people initially, so you just try to comfort them and provide them some food and beverage.
For those acting as victims, realistic makeup, or moulage, was used to simulate real-life wounds that first responders had to both identify and treat.
As victims, we tried to throw a lot at them and, be confused, maybe not always forthcoming about our injuries, not just saying, I'm having a heart attack, but saying, my hand is tingling, my chest feels tight, things like that. So making sure that they have to keep their head on a swivel and be ready for any new circumstances.
The purpose of these drills is to assess preparedness and identify areas for improvement. That's why after each drill, the participating agencies meet to discuss what worked well and what can be done better.
We met initially right after the drill and debriefed, and then we're continuing to meet with fire and EMSA and the airlines to kind of tighten our friends and family plan and make some changes and amendments to our airport emergency plan so that the next time around we're better prepared.
After every drill, after every exercise, we do after-action reports. And those after-action reports list the things that we need to improve on. So with our earthquake drill that we had last year, we had an after-action report. And one of the simple things that we did was we learned that the phones were different in our emergency operations center than it is throughout the city. So we made these little place cards that give you directions on how to use the phones. So it's simple things like that all the way to the clocks weren't working in the way that we had them. We had atomic clocks, but they were all different. So we ended up getting one big clock to where we had to move different sections in our emergency operations center. And testing the communication is one of the big issues when we do that. So by doing these drills, we have these after-action reports so we can improve.
Hopefully, this type of training will only be used in practice scenarios. But in the event there is a real-life emergency, our first responders will be ready. Remember, first responders aren't the only ones who should be prepared for a disaster. For your own emergency preparedness tips, visit santabarbaraca.gov/OES. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more Inside Santa Barbara.
Oh no.
Hi. Oh, honey, how thoughtful of you.
You know me. Plants don't need as much water in the fall and winter, so I decided to get up early and turn it down.
You bringing your golf clubs to my mother's?
Yeah.
Take control of your controller. Turn it down.
It doesn't take a hero to protect our creeks and ocean.
Welcome back. In November of 2000, voters in the city of Santa Barbara approved Measure B, an increase in the transient occupancy tax rate to fund creeks restoration and water quality improvement. Coming up, we take an inside look at the latest Creeks Division restoration project in the Upper Arroyo Borough watershed. Kiana Bowers has the story.
In 2013, the City of Santa Barbara Creeks Division purchased a 14-acre parcel on Foothill Road along the Upper Arroyo Borough watershed known as Barger Canyon. This former avocado orchard is now the site of one of the largest restoration projects undertaken by the Creeks Division to date.
It's just under 5 acres and 2,200 feet of creek channel, so it's a very large project, and it's great to be able to have such a big impact on the watershed by restoring this whole section of creek.
Healthy creeks are instrumental to improving ocean water quality, while also providing important habitat for wildlife. Unfortunately, this environmentally sensitive property was degraded by past land use practices.
Our data from water sample collections that we've taken on this site show that it has unusually high concentrations of bacteria and sediment coming through the water that was flowing through this property. So we're hopeful that through doing this restoration we can reduce those levels of bacteria.
The Barger Canyon project focuses on restoring 5 acres of riparian habitat, which is the area surrounding the creek, while the other 9 acres are currently being allowed to passively return to what was historically an oak woodland. The city's purchase included 1,800 linear feet of creek and a 1-acre conservation easement over the creek side portion of the neighboring property, making a total of 2,200 linear feet of creek.
In the lower, roughly 600 feet of the creek on this section of property, it had previously been straightened, and so we're coming back in. We're going to be widening the channel and bringing back in meanders, so making the creek have some of its natural sinuosity. And this actually reduces the overall slope of the creek channel and allows for greater infiltration of storm flows.
The widening of the creek will provide an enhanced riparian habitat. Riparian zones act as a buffer between our creeks and urban areas, which helps to filter out pollutants from runoff. Vegetation in this area also reduces stream bank erosion and provides shade over creeks, which reduces water temperatures and improves water quality for fish and other aquatic organisms. Riparian zones are also critical habitat for terrestrial wildlife, providing access to water, food, and shelter for native birds and mammals.
Much of the city is an urbanized area, but we still have lots of wildlife, from small mammals, raccoons, skunks, possums, things like that. We also have bobcats and mountain lions, and on this property, deer. And so we're providing wildlife habitat for really the most valuable wildlife habitat we have available in the city.
To restore that valuable habitat, contractors removed invasive plant species as well as impervious surfaces like concrete and asphalt. The soil removed to widen the creek is being used to construct an upland wetland feature, which will provide additional wetland habitat and capture storm runoff. The project aims to restore the creek's natural function and features.
And we're going to be planting a lot of native vegetation and trees on the site. So the creek will just have a much more natural riparian function than what we were seeing before. It'll be a much healthier creek.
And the benefits won't be limited to the habitat and wildlife of the creek area. They will extend down the watershed to our beaches.
All of the surface water runoff enters the creeks, it's not treated, and runs straight out to the ocean. So by doing restoration, we can improve the water quality in our creeks and at the beaches.
The Bartok Canyon Restoration Project will even help combat the effects of the drought through greater capture and infiltration of runoff.
With this property, we're above what's called the Foothill Basin, which is one of two of the large groundwater basins that the city uses for municipal water supply. And so we'll allow more groundwater recharge. We'll also provide some benefit for flood protection of Foothill Road and of downstream creekside areas.
When the project is finished, the site will be open to limited guided access for small tours, schools, and researchers. For more information about the restoration project, visit sbcreeks.com. Speaking of Creeks Division projects, if you've been here on Quarantina Street lately, you've no doubt noticed something different, a new street surface. But these new pavers are more than just an aesthetic upgrade. They're a powerful new tactic in the city's sustainability strategy and a way to treat pollution and stormwater runoff. City TV's Chris Bell has the details.
Santa Barbara is a hard town, literally. After 2.5 centuries of development, much of our beautiful city is covered in some sort of not-so-pretty impermeable surface.
The city is approximately 40% covered in impermeable surface, and the reason for that is historically we've used impermeable materials such as asphalt or concrete to cover our public areas like streets and sidewalks and alleyways, parking lots, but also because of the buildings throughout the city, and that's not atypical for an urban hardscape.
Hardscape in and of itself isn't a problem. Asphalt and concrete are great surfaces for conveying many modes of transportation. Unfortunately, they're also good at conveying pollution. Because of their impermeability, oil, metals, bacteria, and other pollutants accumulate on roads, sidewalks, and roofs. When it rains, those pollutants are washed into creeks and carried directly to the ocean. That toxic soup of pollutants is harmful to birds, insects, aquatic life, and potentially humans. But while Santa Barbara may be typical in its impermeability, it's anything but in its approach to addressing its ill effects. For the last 5 years, the City of Santa Barbara Creeks Division has installed innovative permeable paver demonstration projects around town. The idea behind the concept is to let Mother Nature do the work.
With permeable pavers, we'll basically filter all those. Oils are an organic substance. They go down in there and they get broken down by microbes in the soil. Metals get taken up by trees, things like that. Nutrients, obviously, they're good for the plants around here.
To maximize the power of Mother Nature, these so-called low-impact development projects allow stormwater to soak into the ground, mimicking conditions from a long time ago.
If the streets weren't here, it would be soaking back into the groundwater naturally, getting filtrated through that process and providing benefits to the plants and all the animals that it comes in contact with.
After doing permeable paver projects in parking lots, sidewalks, and an alley, the City Creeks Division set its sights higher and chose 2 city blocks of Quarantina Street to show the technology's potential. They chose Quarantina because it has a unique combination of conditions.
Traffic speeds are low, and so permeable pavers are not designed for fast traffic speeds. At least these particular ones aren't. And also, we had a street here that had issues with the asphalt because the tree roots here would get up underneath the asphalt and grow and really uplift it.
Our hope is that by putting in the permeable pavers, we'll provide more water to the roots of the trees down in the soil, and we will save maintenance costs for the city going forward. It's also an area that has a lot of pedestrian traffic as well as vehicle traffic, so we have an opportunity for a lot of people to see the project.
And the benefits don't stop there. With 2 feet of void-filled base beneath it, the Quarantina project is like one huge detention pond that will hold stormwater and let it gradually seep into the drought-depleted groundwater basin.
The pavers installed along the 2 blocks of Quarantina Street not only capture what falls on them, but they capture runoff from some of the neighboring properties and roadways. We're designed to be able to handle well over a 1-inch rainstorm every 24 hours before the basins underneath the pavers would fill up and overflow. When they do overflow, it just defaults to the historical drainage before the project, which means the water would run along the curb and into a normal storm drain system. But the 1-inch storm allows us to capture all of the water in 85% of the storms that come to Santa Barbara.
And that water gets into the groundwater table. It's available for trees and plants around here, and excess water moves through the groundwater table and then replenishes creek water during dry times, and then also can contribute to groundwater in the drinking water if it's placed in certain areas in the city.
And City Creeks Division staff hopes those certain areas of the city may include your driveway or patio.
We installed these as a demonstration on how you can do this to hopefully encourage people to do this on their own, and also encourage other city departments and the city as a whole to do this as a stormwater treatment practice.
While permeable pavers have higher upfront costs than asphalt, they more than make up for it in the long run.
On a typical asphalt street, I think it's every 6 years, the city comes through and slurry seals that street to maintain it. And so that's just an extra coating of asphalt on top. Permeable pavers, once they're put down, they don't need any other coating or extra seals or anything like that. And they're expected to last 60, 80 plus years. And additionally with asphalt, every about 25 or 30 years, it has to be ground down and then re-asphalted altogether, and then possibly new base added and things like that. The life of the pavers, you would go through at least 2 cycles of that with asphalt.
Another benefit to consider with the maintenance is utility maintenance underneath the pavers. So when the city needs to go in and maintain utilities under the roadway, the crews can pull the pavers out and take the gravel out that's underneath them, do the utility maintenance, and then use those same materials and put them right back in place.
The $1.4 million project was completed ahead of schedule and under budget, with 80% of the costs being paid for by grants. And this is where the benefits of voters passing Measure B back in 2000 come into play.
It's a significant benefit not only for the matching funds that we need for the grants, but also our ability to maintain projects, so that when grant managers come to look at our projects, they're always well maintained, and we're able to do that because we have that steady stream of revenue.
Permeable pavers may not be appropriate for every street or sidewalk, but by providing attractive, effective, real-world examples like the Quarantina Street project, the City Creeks Division hopes more people will realize the power of permeability.
It would be a good thing if we could capture all of the urban runoff from our streets and sidewalks and alleyways and treat that before it gets into the creeks and into the ocean. It's very, very difficult to do that at the end of the street. If we can do it through permeable pavers or permeable surface in the roadways and capture and treat it right on site, that's our best approach.
This is an opportunity for us to look at stormwater as a resource as opposed to a waste stream.
If you'd like to learn more about the city's permeable paver projects, visit sbcreeks.com. Well, that does it for this episode of Inside Santa Barbara. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you can give us a call at 564-5311. If you missed something, not to worry, you can watch the show online at santabarbaraca.gov/citytv. I'm your host, Becky Davis, and remember to get involved inside Santa Barbara.